Waiting for it. Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Proactive Podcast. Today, I am joined by an extra special guest, a Clubhouse friend who I actually get to see in human person rather than just in voice. Babble, Brooke is an international award-winning host, TV stage actor, Fortune 500 spokesperson turned motivational speaker coach. Due to a near decade-long health journey, inspires and empowers others through her story, from Hollywood to Housebound to healing, and encourages them to keep going while letting them know they're not alone. That anything is possible. Not anything is impossible. Anything is possible, and helping amplify their voices, which is just the whole ethos and principle of this podcast, the Proactive Podcast, how you can achieve more. So good evening, good morning, Babylon. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thanks, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely awesome. Thank you. And out of interest, do you prefer Babylon or do you prefer Brooke?
Let's go with Brooke. Easier to say.
Makes more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for coming and being a guest today. It's crazy how this new Clubhouse app is taking over our lives and introducing us to new people from across the pond, because you're not in the UK, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I was going to say, so paint a little picture for my listeners and of where you are and
because it's cold where you are, right? So
freezing.
All right. Then live vicariously through me for a moment. If you'd all like to close your eyes, and I'll let you know what I'm seeing outside of the window. The sun is shining. The trees are in full bloom. The birds are chirping. The weather is just under 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm sorry, but not sorry, I guess.
70 degrees.
Yeah.
70 degrees. I'd be happy if it was 21. You know, that's kind of what we get here in the UK. That's like 20 degrees, nice shorts weather, good suntan. That's a good thing to go. So for the audience, I hope I did your intro justice, but do you just want to introduce them a little bit to who you are?
Sure. And it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me. And so great to be with your audience. Hello, everyone. Like Gary said, yes, I am Babble, Brooke. I come from the world of entertainment as an international actor, award-winning host, and Fortune 500 spokesperson. I have had a really crazy last decade while healing from a severe injury due to a car accident that left me housebound. And that turned me into a motivational speaker and coach. So I coach people on speaking and social media, and now Clubhouse as well. So yeah, and that's how Gary and I met.
Exactly. And I'm sure we'll get into all three of those during this episode, won't we? So that'll be awesome. But let's go back to prior to kind of your Hollywood stage. Talk to us about that, because that will no doubt bring us up to the journey. What were you doing in Hollywood? I'm intrigued.
Sure. So I come from the world of theater. I got my start in musical theater, and I did the whole national tour thing, all of that. I worked in New York. I was briefly in London and worked for Nickelodeon over there, actually. So I worked for the news and theater. And then it segued into more hosting work. So I was doing a lot of red carpet interviews, that kind of thing. And I loved that. So that was my world, and a lot of TV commercials, Fortune 500 spokesperson work. It was just a hodgepodge of things. I would usually go to events. I would go to about 10 to 12 events per week in Hollywood and the LA area. So my life was just out and about, quite the social butterfly. And I loved it. I loved that world. I loved entertainment. I always wanted to be a part of it. So it just made sense. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was hard work. There's no doubt. It was very, very hard work. I didn't grow up here. I'm originally from the East Coast, from Philadelphia. And so it took a lot to come out here and not knowing anyone and, start from scratch. Yeah. But did that and yeah, really, really enjoyed it. And I was at the height of my career when I had my accident.
And what were you in any shows that we would know? Any big name shows out there in your theater life?
In theater, I don't know what I'm trying to think of what you guys would know over on that side, because Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what translates, but a lot of musicals, yeah, you probably know them, but maybe you don't. So I don't know. I'm trying to think what's over there, but yeah, definitely. I'm sure you've probably seen me on commercials over there because I've done a lot of international commercials as well.
Yeah,
So yeah,
theatre's really, really big. Like I've actually grown
yeah.
up. My parents were really into Les Mis, so I
Oh,
think I've seen it like 9 times, including the 50th anniversary at the huge O2 over here and stuff like that. When I was
right.
younger, my mum says I could have had understudied for any part because I knew every word.
Knew
And
it
there's a
all.
little insight to my audience who wouldn't know that about me.
I've
But
never been in Les Mis. Yeah,
yeah,
unfortunately, that would have been wonderful. But and I
yeah,
know you have such a big scene there. It is different there than here, though. But when I lived there briefly, I went to shows constantly. Anything I could get to, I was going to. I mean, it was just magical. London and that whole area is it's like a fairy tale.
yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And then you said that. So after that, you were at the height of your career, and
Yeah.
then you had an accident. So talk us through what kind of happened and how the transition took place.
Sure. So ironically, I was on my way to an audition and for another commercial, and I was in a 4-car pileup on a freeway, and I was in an SUV, so, a large vehicle in the middle of the other cars, and so even my SUV was completely totaled, and so I wound up surprisingly walking away from it. Nothing was broken, but there was a lot of pain. But I was alive. I mean, it was amazing. If you could see what the SUV looked like, it was incredible. So walked away from it, but needed a lot of assistance, needed a lot of medical care in terms of pain management. What wound up happening, and this is what's really strange, is that in that first year of healing, and I was doing a lot of physical therapy, chiropractic, you name it, anything to help the pain, all of a sudden, I started having difficulty speaking. And then I started having difficulty months later breathing. And so I was hospitalized several times. I wound up having 6 neck surgeries. Um, they were doing anything they could to try to assist my body, but they couldn't figure out exactly what the root cause was. So it's a very common thing over here in the States to band-aid the problem, without finding out what's causing it. And so I was having all these band-aids placed on, but the symptoms were getting worse and worse. So I would be at home and I would stand up and my heart rate would go up to 160. I would fall down and I would crawl to the phone to call for an ambulance. And this was my life every day. And I just kept being taken back to the hospital and kept being placed in the cardiac unit because they thought it was my heart, but they couldn't diagnose exactly what it was. So finally, after 3 years of that, it was complete, a nightmare. After 3 years of living that way, they figured out that it was what's called the vagus nerve. And that nerve is the major nerve in our bodies. It's like the motherboard to our computer. And if that nerve is not happy in any particular place, it sends the body just crazy. It's haywire. So that nerve, because it connects to your cardiovascular system, your pulmonary system, respiratory, everything, you name it, it can do anything at any time if it's not happy and if anything's wrong with it. And that's exactly what was happening. So I had to then become housebound because I could no longer be transported in a vehicle. If I was in a vehicle, it would agitate the nerve. And that's what they figured out what was happening. Anything, any motion, any movement would agitate the nerve. And then all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. So I was housebound and I spent years laying flat on a massage table, not moving, staring at the ceiling. My partner had to leave his job and become my 24/7 caregiver, spoon feed me, take me to the bathroom, everything. And then I had a doctor that would come here 6 days a week for anywhere between 4 to 6 hours and do all kinds of things and hook me up to different machines and this and that. And so, but prior to that, I was told by other doctors that I wouldn't be here. I was told to say my goodbyes. I was told everything, all kinds of things. And yeah, I was prepared for that. But something deep inside me told me that there was a reason for all of this and to keep going. And that's where Babylon comes from. Because while I would be laying there staring at the ceiling, wondering why I was here, not even wanting to be here at that point, I was very suicidal, very depressed. I I just felt strongly that there was a reason. Like it didn't make sense to me that I would be going through that for naught. And so I told myself I have to come up with some sort of mantra. I have to say something to myself to get me through this. I have to get through this. And so I started saying Babylon because Brooke, babbling Brooke, I've always loved speaking. And I just said Babylon. And to me, it meant, and it still means keep going, keep going. And so that's what I did for years. I laid there. I told myself that. My partner would read to me like travel magazines and travel blogs, and I would picture what life would be like outside of four walls. And I hoped to be able to get there someday. But for a long time, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. I was just in this dark hole, and it felt like it was never going to end. And so once I started to get strong enough to be able to do it, I began live streaming in 2015. So I started live streaming on Twitter Live, which was Periscope, and we had it rigged. So we had an iPad like levitating above me. And even before I could speak, we taught them my language of blinking. So I would blink to them. They would ask me a question, and one blink meant yes, two meant no, and three meant I love you. And so I would blink to them. And then when I felt up to it, I would speak. And that just grew over time. I started to get stronger and stronger. I'm still on the road to a total recovery, but oh my gosh, this is like miles beyond where I was. And now I can go outside, I can ride in a car, I see all of my doctors outside. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that I hung on.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
that is absolutely insane. So was the total time you were 3 years you were laid flat on the bed, or it was 3 years backwards and forwards to the doctors? And then how long were you laid on the bed for?
Oh gosh, it's such a it's such a blur. So it was 3 years of back and forth to the doctors and having surgeries, operations, hospitalizations, all of that. Then became housebound, and it's hard to say. It was about 3 years of that, but there was still more at the end. Like I'd have
Transition.
like a good month, and then there'd be a couple months where it was like, oh, just kidding. Okay, there was a lot of that,
Yeah.
and then here's the craziest part. So I had to get strong enough to have another procedure, to have something alternative. I did stem cell, if you're familiar with that. And there was a lot of lead up to that, but I had to be physically in a place to be able to do it. So I finally do it. And it's this whole thing leading up to it for like 6 months. And then finally do it. And I'm so happy. And they said, okay, great. For it to have its best effect, we need you to do this protocol for the next, whatever it was, few months. I said, great. And we prepared for this. We were so ready to go. I have it. And then the following week, we have the largest wildfire that Southern California has ever seen. And we had to evacuate, and we were displaced for 6.5 weeks. So I couldn't do that protocol. I mean, just crazy stuff, Gary. You and I could sit here for like a year and talk about this. It's wild. It's wild. But yeah.
Wow. To hear that, the back and forth to the doctors is one thing, but then to literally be on a massage table, looking up at the ceiling for nigh on roughly 3 years and everything else, not being able to move, to then get to where you are now. I really want to dig into that mindset. Like you say, you kicked in with Babylon. And when you first were at the top of your career, when this first kind of happened, and you realized obviously it was quite serious and you had your accident, how long was it at the point when you were laying flat on the table that it really sort of kicked in? Or how did firstly, let's address the first mindset, because I imagine this is in stages. Mindset number one, you're at the top of your career and then all of a sudden you've had a car accident and you can no longer continue on that. What was that mindset shift like for you?
I didn't realize when it happened the impact that it would have. That I think was one of the hardest parts. It would have been one thing if the accident had happened and I was in a full body cast, or because at least then I would have had answers and it would have been explainable. But instead, to be on this wild goose chase of not knowing, that was one of the hardest parts. But yeah, to go back to that, to have worked so hard for well over a decade and to finally get to a place where I felt really good about where I was, and then to have that happen, it was crazy. And one of the other crazy parts is that for the years after, I was struggling and no one knew because they were still seeing me on TV, like on these commercials and things. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so strange. There I am on the TV and looking nothing like how I feel.
Mm.
So that was hard. And a lot of people didn't understand. And one of the things was I became estranged from my family. My own family didn't understand. They weren't willing to learn about what was going on. And quite frankly, I didn't understand. So that was another piece that was just another complication in the soup.
And looking back on that now, kind of almost you weren't speaking out going through those feelings at that time. Knowing what you know now, looking back upon yourself at that point in time, what advice would you give to yourself at that stage when you were starting to feel like that with your family and everything else?
Whew, it's tough. I've thought about that obviously so much. I'm one of those people, I've just always tried to put on a happy face. I did that my whole life. And I was always told by my family that, negativity was not a good thing. No one liked that. And so even while I was struggling in the beginning, I would try to put on a happy face because I would attempt to share what was going on and it would just get pushed down. And yeah, so I think honestly, if I could go back, like if I would tell that younger Brooke to stand up for herself more and to not worry what other people thought, and to be completely authentic. When I did finally start to do that, it still wasn't well received. So I don't know if it would have made a difference, but it probably would have made me feel better to have, been more, I think I would have felt more empowered doing that. On the flip side though, I was doing my best to have a positive mindset to help myself. So it was a strange dichotomy, and I think that's for anyone going through any sort of physical, mental, emotional struggle. It's like, what do? You want to be able to communicate what you're going through, but at the same time, you need to be able to give yourself positivity and, positive reinforcing thoughts so that you can manage what's going on. So I think it's important to have conversations like this because everyone in the world is going through something. And it's important to know that so that we don't assume, so that we don't judge, and so that we can be more empathetic and understanding of others.
Definitely. Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And that's why I was asking, because there are probably some people who are listening to this who are going through pain and hardship and struggle and kind of not realizing. And, mental health has been a big topic, particularly during COVID and Corona, and that element of actually just speaking out, having conversations, communicating. And we're going to get to your speaking element in a not too distant future of this. But going to kind of phase 2 of that, then things obviously got much worse because then you were told, you've now got to lay on a massage bed and you've got to look at the same ceiling. You mentioned that mindset and that positivity that you were telling yourself. How low, you said obviously it went seriously low and you thought about, harming yourself, etc. on that. How did you transition for anyone who's at the bottom of that barrel, and at the lowest possible points? Yes, you came up with Babylon, and how did you transition yourself out of that?
That's such a good question. Whew. I mean, there was more than even I've shared so far. So let me just tell you exactly how bad it got. So And I'm saying this so that anyone that's listening knows you can come back from the darkest pit. Like, it is possible. And I wish I had had someone telling me that then. That's what I needed to hear and what I could not find. And I think had I heard that sooner, it would have made a big difference. So for that reason, I'll share that not only was I laying flat on a massage table, being spoon fed, being taken to the bathroom by my partner, which in itself was it felt disempowering. It felt, you're so vulnerable. It's embarrassing. But then you're laying there, you're struggling to breathe. You're wondering if you're going to see the next day. You want to speak to let both your partner and your doctor know what's going on, and you can't get the words out. You can't let them know how you feel. You want to communicate with your family. They're not communicating because they refuse to communicate through your partner. They wanted to speak directly to me, and they wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, it was crazy, but I couldn't communicate. We went bankrupt because of the medical bills. I was on this live streaming platform, and there was someone who decided to just turn into a bully. I found out later that she did this to a lot of people who had medical issues. She herself has some issues. And people online had started a medical fundraiser for me to help, which was amazing. And I felt so loved and supported. It was incredible. And I had about 24 hours of feeling that euphoria. And then this person stepped in and did everything possible to sabotage it. She started all these random accounts on social media pretending to be me and saying things about me, and all the stuff she started sending people to where I lived. So during this time, we had to move. If you can imagine, we had to pack up our place, which I couldn't help with, and move. So I'm sharing that because changing the environment wound up helping a lot. Actually, it really wound up helping because I had associated where we lived before so much with being in that dark place. So that helped. Listening to my partner read to me about travel, that would allow me to imagine what could be possible. I made a decision, quite honestly, that I was going to travel someday, that it was going to happen. Because at first I would ask him to read me travel, and I got jealous. I thought, oh my gosh, there's all these people out there traveling. I wish that were me. So it backfired. And then it was up to me really to decide, okay, no, I'm going to picture myself when he reads to me. I'm going to picture myself in those places as if I'm there. Like, what does that feel like? And that's going to happen in my future. Maybe not next year, maybe not 5 years or 10 years from now, but eventually. So we wound up putting up pictures of travel. So where I was laying, I would be looking at pictures while he read to me. We did everything that you could think of to invoke the senses to help. So everything, we just pulled out all the stops. And it really ultimately, to answer your question, it came down to me deciding. But then I did need to have the environment changed. I needed to be seeing things that were positive. I needed to be reminded of them constantly. And yeah, that's what started the path then to real healing. And then what I would also do was anytime there was any sort of progress within my body, I would internally celebrate that so much. And I remember the day when I finally was able to hold a water bottle and drink out of it myself. Oh my gosh, that was I don't know if anything gets better than that. And so I would hold on to those things that seem really small, but I would hold them so close and just keep thinking of the feeling. And that would carry me over to the next milestone.
Yeah, and that's so, so powerful without a shadow of a doubt. And the mindset that you've got to go through that transition is just incredible. And I think the things that I pick out from what you've just said from a hack point of view and things that I do in my own life that hopefully the audience can kind of learn from that is one, that visualization.
Yes.
Is what you said, by having the things that you could physically see, in the same way that an athlete or a runner visualizes themselves winning the race and crossing the line with their arms in the air or whatever they do. You were visualizing the travel. You said that you also started with the actual belief that it was going to be possible.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important, is you actually control, your mindset controls your decisions, and your decisions control your outcome. And you decided that you were going to live in a more positive state, that you were going to actually come out of this the other side, and you were going to travel. And you said that the change in environment, which I think is massive, particularly the COVID and Corona world that we've been in, people haven't been able to travel to offices, and this is kind of putting it in context for the listeners. It's, you're in the same household. You can't go to gyms here in the UK in particular, but actually just getting out. If you're stuck in your work, for example, and you just go and have a walk, or you go and play with your kids, or you go and have a cup of tea or a coffee or whatever it might well be, that can have a drastic impact on your mindset. And that final one that you said as well is the celebrating the small wins. Like, how many of us take for granted that element of being able to, exactly as you are now, pick up a glass of water and have a little drink, being able to hold a pen and write your name, and all these things that just become so unconsciously competent.
Yeah.
And you've had to rebuild yourself almost like a child again, really, haven't you? Back through learning all those aspects and everything else. So through that, is there anything else that you think enabled you to remain proactive throughout that whole entire span? Like, I haven't even got to the point of what was the deciding moment of putting the iPad on the ceiling
Oh,
and actually starting to utilize social media, because surely that's kicked into your business stuff now, right?
Right. It's so funny because I do a lot of these podcasts, and we always wind up talking about different things. We'll touch on this a little, but we don't dig too deeply into it. And a lot of people over the years have asked me to write a book, but I haven't, quite honestly, I haven't wanted to go there yet. I know I want to someday, because I know it will help others, but I just haven't, it's still so blurry. I think maybe when there's more time away from it, but it's so funny. So I love that you're asking these questions, because it's getting me to think, how did we decide to rig the iPad up like that? I think it got to a point, I don't know, every day was so, every day there were tears. Every day there was tremendous pain. Every day there was struggle. And I think, my partner is an absolute angel. And I think that he was just doing anything he could to help. The iPad, I know how that happened, actually. Okay, I do know how that happened. So we had befriended someone through the live streaming world who owns a company that they're actually the largest company that produces mounts and things for the phone. So they do phones, iPads, all of that. They have over 600 products. So he knew that we had this idea, and he helped actually make something from scratch for us. And, so we could make that work. But
why though? Why did you decide that day when you woke up? What suddenly just made you want to put an iPad on your ceiling? Like, you must have been at the bottom of your barrel, as you were saying, and kind of real depths of despair. And
I was underneath the barrel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was, the barrel was.
I can't even imagine.
It was just, I think we were just grasping for anything to help, because again, once I got to that point, it was so weird, because I would spend the days struggling to try to be here. And yet deep down, I didn't really want to be here. I didn't feel like me being here made a difference. So that was one of the things. I had to get to a point where I realized that it did make a difference for me to be here. I just didn't feel like it did, again, because of all the family stuff and whatnot. I thought, why am I trying so hard? I feel like I'm a burden to my partner. It would be easier. It would be better if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
So taking to being online and live streaming from that regard really helped, because what wound up happening was, as we began sharing this journey, people started reaching out by the thousands. Then it was tens of thousands. Grew and grew and grew from around the world. We got a PO box we had to, at the mailbox, post office. There we go. It's already been a long day. Sorry. Yes, we got a PO box at the post office because people wanted to send letters, and we had all these letters of people saying that watching this journey not only changed their lives, but a lot of them it saved their lives. They were also contemplating suicide. And they said, if I can watch you on that table and I can see what you're going through, I know that I can get past what I have going on. And then it became more about them. Then I was here for them. So that was, another thing. It was, okay, now I have a reason. But before that, a lot of it had to do with my faith. I have very strong faith. And that's not something I grew up with. It's something that I sought as an adult. And I'm glad that I did. I feel like it all happened for a reason, because then I knew it really is hard to describe, but I just knew that there was going to be a reason, that this was going to be for good someday, in some way, like that this was happening on purpose. And so that was one of the biggest things that I clung to. I would say that even before the visualization or mindset shift, it was the faith. I just felt like I was supposed to be here and continue going on.
Yeah, and that's such an incredible mindset that took me, I've never been in anything as anywhere near as bad of that, but when I look back on my business journey or elements of my childhood, I shattered my left knee when I was 13 and I spent 6 months in hospital and had to have it rigged to keep it moving and all these kind of little things. But when I now look back on it, it's like everything has happened for a reason, because your life would be completely different had you not have had that circumstance. The failure that I had I say failure, the business that I built that I hated in 2015, but the mistakes that you've made along the way, life is happening for you.
Yes.
To teach you and educate you, which is such a hard thing to realize. It's not necessarily happening to you, because like you said, it's that element of how you choose to react to the situation that dictates what you do next.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So moving on to where you now got to that point, you're live streaming, you're blinking at the iPad on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Like, how did you talk us through that whole healing journey to now, coming out the other side of this and being the person that you are today?
Yeah, I started making, over time, long stretches, I started making progress. Because I then had something to work towards, I had a reason to be here. I clung to that. I thought, I have to be here for these people. If I don't get through this, or if I don't at least try, I felt responsible for all these people around the world, which was a good thing. That was a good thing. That was the impetus for me to want to keep at it. And so I just, working with my doctor, we began turning it up a notch, and doing whatever needed to happen. Part of that was, as we were talking about offline before, was the way that I was eating. We made massive shifts with that, and that was helping. And my gosh, we just did everything under the sun. We made our place it looked like a medical practice. We got rid of all the furniture. We got every device we could think of. The whole place was just all these medical devices. And I would constantly be doing whatever I needed to do. And we even got things from different countries shipped in. It was crazy. So, and there are a lot of things from other countries that we don't have here that helped a lot, that I wish were here for other people. And so I don't know. It just started happening. The progress started happening. And I think maybe it was 2017. I don't know. Again, like I said, everything's a blur. But I think that was the year that I started taking a picture every day I went outside, because I was so happy that could happen. So any day that I could actually put on regular clothes and go outside, and we would just go outside for the picture. We would go outside, take the picture, I'd come back in, take the clothes off. but I have a handful of pictures from that year, and that was amazing. And so then I would cling to those and I would look at those. That's actually why I started posting on certain platforms online, because I wanted to have a vision board of what life could look like.
Yeah.
I wanted to see myself that way, not what I saw in the mirror every day, not what I felt every day. I wanted to see myself looking like I was thriving. And then if I could look that way, then maybe I could get myself there mentally and emotionally. And then getting myself there mentally and emotionally would assist me physically. That was my train of thought. Not even totally realizing it at the time, but that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, one thing built upon the next, upon the next, upon the next. Like I said, I built myself up to be able to then do this protocol for stem cell and things like that. That helped a lot. So everything was just increasingly helping. And yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now.
Okay.
I mean, or where we're like maybe, I'd say a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah. And then when did you, going from that point, when did you suddenly realize that there's potentially a business in this for you? Because
Yeah.
that's when you reflecting on that journey from what you've said, it's like you're at the peak of your career. You've had an accident. You're then backwards and forwards. No, not being able to do the career that you've known. You're then you're then bedridden and housebound, moving home, flat on a board, looking at an iPad. And then that day that they obviously said, right, you can get up. I imagine that was probably an incredible day, right?
Oh my gosh. Well, so the whole time I was able to get up with my partner's help, because I would have to, because he would take me to the bathroom, things like that.
Yeah.
So I was never, I want to be clear, like I was never paralyzed.
Yeah.
What we called it, even the doctors, they would say it's like you're upside down paralyzed, because my legs worked, but everything was stemming from the neck, and which stems out to everything else. So that's what complicated things. So I could walk, but just with assistance, and it was difficult. And I wasn't walking around the block or anything like that. So
How did you transition into the business side then?
So that came from people asking. It came from two things. I knew that, especially living in LA, I knew that it wasn't going to be feasible to ever go back to work. You know, like you said, the work I did before, and I wouldn't be out there driving. I'm still not driving to this day. So I knew I needed to figure out something to do from home. And people started asking, because they would see me on social media, or they would see me on these other, at one point I was on so many different platforms, and they would ask how to use them, and, would I give them assistance? And it just turned into coaching. And even back in the day when I was doing all the entertainment stuff, people would come to me all the time for speaking coaching to prepare them for TV interviews and things like that. So I thought, oh my gosh, maybe there's something here where I can coach people from home on Zoom. This was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it made sense and has snowballed from there. But even that in the beginning, it's like one coaching call, that would be it. I would then be out the rest of the day. That was as much as I could do with projecting my voice. So yeah, I've been working on just getting stronger and stronger.
So it's still recent, isn't it? That's the crazy thing. You've only just started getting back to, you've obviously got the massive acting career and being able to teach people and the speaking. And what is it you're helping them to actually do? Is it to formulate their message, and then actually how to project that as well, and how to structure it and all of those elements? And then does that feed into the social side as well?
Exactly. So the way I say it is I help them become clear, because that's the number one thing, right? Clear on what their message is, whether it's a product, service, message. Then we take it into being comfortable, and that's a lot of comfort and confidence. That's a lot of the heavy duty lifting, I find. People, we all know, have such deep rooted false limiting beliefs and stories. It's just a lot of mindset work. Then we work on the actual end product, and that's where I help them to be creative, because I think a lot of people online they're kind of cookie cutters and carbon copies of other people. They think that that's what they're supposed to do. And I understand that. So I like working with people and bringing out their unique strengths and gifts that they might not even know they have, but that they do and can lend themselves to being online. And there's just so many people that are terrified of being online, or they're online and nothing's happening. They're not growing. And so, yeah, that's a lot of that. It's fun. I love helping people get to a place where you just see their confidence soar, and then the results come after. And I feel like a proud parent, I'm like, oh, yay.
Yeah. And it's so key that you won't know this, but in 2015, I classify myself as socially anxious because I spent 10 years building a business. I had my close friends, I had my family, and I had my work colleagues. And they used to take the mick, my team did, about the fact that if I left the zip code, as you will call it, the postcode as we do here in the UK, like if I left our zip code or our postcode, I'd come out in palpitations and hives and all this kind of thing. And it was a running joke. And I remember going to a networking event, my first one ever, and I was number 28 out of 30 to do my little 30-second elevator pitch, as they call it. And I was I was so anxious because I'd never spoken in front of a room of 30 people. I just existed in this little bubble, so to speak. And I got a coach in speaking. I did a speaker training course, and it is just that fear of being on stage in front of hundreds of people. But that element of the first time I ever got on stage after doing my training and all that was to an audience of 250 people for 5 minutes. But I tell you what, that 5 minutes, the lead up felt like it was 5 hours. And the actual time that I was on stage felt like it was about 15 minutes when it was only 5. But I think that's so important is just having somebody like yourself who can help you to overcome those fears. And like you say, you said mindset was a key thing there. And that's been a huge topic that I'm taking away from today, is just your mindset is pinnacle, really, in terms of what it is. And what's the one commonality and the one piece of advice you give to somebody that comes to you for speaker training that's really fearful of doing it?
Oh my gosh. One of the first things that I find from most people is their own self-talk. So I have them become aware of that. And that it's like, you can't take someone who has never swam before in a pool and just throw them in and expect them to go back and forth and like Michael Phelps, and make some crazy great time out of it. Like, they need to first get in the water, they need to get comfortable, that sort of thing. So with speaking, I mean, I know that there are a lot of programs out there that just kind of throw people to the wolves and say, here, go say this. And for me, I don't take that approach because I don't feel that that's really the most helpful. Maybe it is for some people, but from what I find is starting to work with someone to become aware of their own self-talk is one of the biggest things and best things you can do for a person. That awareness is so key, because even if you give them every exercise in the world, if they're still saying certain things to themselves, forget it. It's another Band-Aid. Like, they can go out, maybe they'll give a few talks, but they'll never stick with it because they'll get in their own way over and over.
Yeah. Have you always known that, or do you think that stemmed out of the years that you've had, obviously being from the mindset that you were previously? Because self-talk and language is so vital. Like you said, talking to yourself in a positive manner earlier.
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. It did come out of this journey, and I'm thankful for that. I wish I had known this before. I wish I probably, I don't know, entertainment probably would have been even easier. Like, I wish I had known these skills sooner.
Yeah. Positive language and putting things and framing things positively for yourself as well, isn't it? I believe so. I'm assuming here, but law of attraction, affirmations.
Oh yeah, all that stuff, all of it. Give me all of it. I believe in it so much, and I know there are some people who might steer away, and that's okay. There are other ways to do that kind of thing without calling it that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of high performers, they're doing that without even realizing that they're doing that. And that's what makes them a high performer. So like you said, athletes, that they envision, winning the race. or like slamming the ball into the hoop, like all of that. They're envisioning it constantly, and they're feeling what it would be like when that happens.
Yeah.
That's that is law of attraction. That is manifestation.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I always, whenever I talk about it, I always use the boxer analogy, and it's that element of, Conor McGregor in UFC, or, Anthony Joshua here in the UK. They would never step into the ring with the mindset that they're going to lose.
Right, right.
They've done the training, they've pushed themselves really hard. And the mentality is there is no other thing other than I'm stepping into this ring and I am going to win the fight.
Yeah.
That's the only mentality. And it's applying that to all areas of life, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And do you think that's how your mind transitioned? You got to that stage where actually you knew you were going to walk again. You knew you were going to be sitting here today kind of doing this.
Yeah. You know what it was? I didn't want to be a vegetable. And that's what I was. So for me, it was either I'm not going to be here anymore. I'm going to either, I'll just say it, I'm either going to just die, my body will die, or I'll do it myself, or I'm going to live. And if I'm going to live, I'm going to live the life I want to live. Like there was no in between for me. So I did have to have that shift of, okay, fine. If I'm going to stay here, no more of this laying here and struggling and the da 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 da. And so it was, what do I have to do in here to make this other stuff work? The doctor's coming every day. He's hooking me up to machines. Why isn't anything changing? And it did take this to support this.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it got to that point. I was fed up. Honestly, there was no other option. I was either going to wither away or take myself away, or stay here and stay here fully, and yeah, that's really what did it.
Amazing.
But it took so long. I wish I had gotten there before, but I think I got there when I was supposed to get there. And I had, my mind had to catch up to my body had to catch up to my mind, all of that. I'll tell you what one of the worst things was that while this was happening, so I was in my accident when I was 31. So that was the time when everyone was starting to, like, everyone I could think of, so many people were traveling and they were getting married and having all these parties and starting to have kids. And that's when you're supposed to be doing all of that. And I was just watching that go by. And that was not being able to partake in any of that, when it's supposed to be the prime time in your life. So I've had to reframe that too. I turned 40 this past year. And to me, it's like, okay, fine. My 30s were spent that way. I accept that. My 40s are going to be so freaking amazing. And so I went into 40 excited. All these people were like, oh, 40. Oh my God, aren't you? And I'm like, what? No, it's going to be amazing. And it is amazing. And, gosh, people.
Yeah. And I imagine you're like, every day is just a blessing for you now, right? Yeah.
Oh, I always say, and ever since I started live streaming, so I've been saying this now for 6 years.
Yeah.
I have ended every live stream by saying, when you wake up breathing, it's a good day. Because it is. When we wake up and we're breathing, I wake up every day and I go, oh my gosh, I just breathe. And it wasn't a struggle. And wow. So I already feel like I'm waking up such a winner. I'm such a winner. And then something I encourage people to do is think about all the things that you can do and all the things that you do have, because we're so conditioned, especially with the news, to focus on what we can't do, what we don't have. Forget that. It's like, what can you do? Can you get up and get out of bed on your own? That's incredible. Can you dress yourself? Wow, there are a lot of people in this world that can't. Do you have a roof over your head? What a blessing. And food on your plate and clothes on your back. It's like, these are all such gifts. Not everyone has this. Yeah. And so, that's so important.
Every day in gratitude. That's they always talk about gratitude, high performance. You mentioned it earlier. the amount of people that are just happy and grateful in the morning, grateful in the evening, celebrating those things. And actually, just if you can come from that place
Yeah.
of being thankful for being able to breathe, being able to lift up a glass of water, having your children, being home life. Like I say, I haven't listened. I don't know about you. I haven't watched the news in probably 5-6 years, maybe, because it's conditioning you to be doom and gloom.
Yes. Yes. I mean, think of how different the world would be. And this has always been something I've wanted to do. If we could, I know we're never going to get rid of that kind of news. I understand. And again, I worked in it and I know how it is. But if we could at least try to maybe neutralize it by bringing in positive news, if we had some positive news going on TV simultaneously and then let people choose, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? I really feel like it would impact the world for the
100%.
better. I want to see more cats getting rescued from trees, by firemen or happy news, like, So,
Exactly. That's why I've effectively done this podcast now, because
yes.
it's about inspiring the world to be more proactive, to go out and achieve more mentally, physically, financially. You have this opportunity for life to grasp it and to be able to think that anything is possible.
Yes. And it so is. And I'll tell you, I received great news recently. I am cleared now to start sleeping on a bed. I haven't slept on a bed since 2014. I mean, I have a couple times when I've tried, like we've
7 years.
gone to a hotel for a night and just tried it, testing here and there, but very rarely. I've probably slept on a bed maybe, I don't know, eight or 10 nights since 2014. And they've been glorious, but then there's been ramifications after. So I just got cleared. And so now I think I'm going to get a bed because I know, because I'm still sleeping on the table. So I'm like, well, how do I do this now? How does this even work? And it's so exciting. So that's definitely going to be something I'll be documenting online, because my gosh, it's like you just told me I got a trip around the world. A bed? Like, oh my God. So, yeah.
I love that. I'm so inspired by listening to you today, because it reminds me that, everything that I've faced in my life is just ridiculous in comparison to the journey that you've been on. It's like, I can't even, shattering my knee is probably one of those things. And it's like, I shattered my knee. You broke your back and sat in a bed for 3 years. It's like, how can I even go through that and actually have that? And that inspires me just to remember that mine's a tiny little pea in the consideration of other things that are going on out there in the world. And that's always the thing, that life is happening for you, not necessarily to you. And I love the NLP saying that, there is no failure, there is only feedback. And it's that only feedback is the element that I really, really like. It's how you assess each situation and how you manage it. And you said there as well about you're going to be documenting the next phase for Babble, Brooke, going forward. So we can't not end without that positive note around social media, Clubhouse that so rightly connected us. What are you going to be doing going forward now with social media? And you said you help people with their social media. Talk to us about social media and Clubhouse.
Oh, I am loving Clubhouse. Aren't you?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It's so incredible. And I feel like it's the perfect time. It just feels right for this time, for all of us, for the world. And for me personally, I haven't felt this way in so long. I'm not sure if I've felt this way ever, to be quite honest, where I feel like I'm finally in the right place at the right time. And Clubhouse has come along, and for me, it utilizes my strengths, my gifts, and I love it. I feel so fulfilled. I feel appreciated. I feel understood. I adore every aspect of it. And so I have created a course about Clubhouse and about how to become a top moderator on there. And that's coming out in a couple weeks. And I also have a program that goes with that to give people additional support in the months preceding, or following rather. So I'm super excited. And people can find out about that if they'd like at babbleonbrooke.com. And so, I love lifting other people's voices, and I have no doubt you'll be seeing a lot of me on Clubhouse, a lot more of me. I'm just I adore it. So thank you, Clubhouse people.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And for those
Clubhouse
of you,
gods.
for those of you who are living in a rabbit burrow somewhere and have absolutely no idea what Clubhouse is, like where have you actually been? But it's effectively a social media app that is almost like live podcasting, live radio shows. You've got people who are presenting, hosts, and then you have moderators who effectively, control the room, shall we say. And then the audience can listen in and they can raise their hand and come up on stage and have a conversation and ask a question. And generally, I've been on stages with Babble quite a few times. Brooke, sorry, been on stages with Brooke. It's tripping me up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I know, because that's all that fits under the photo on the screen. So that's all that shows. I know.
Yeah. And it's, you're up on stage and you get to meet great people and you connect with great people. And, it's just so weird that being on the app, I've had a chat with Tyrese, who is, huge in most of the Fast and Furious movies.
Mm-hmm.
Paris Hilton followed me after a conversation with her. It's like, where else can you connect with such people and make huge connections and huge relationships and do opportunities like this where we get to hear your inspiring story? And moderation is all about controlling the room and hosting the room and making it a great experience for those that are in the audience.
Definitely.
And that leans in so well, doesn't it, to it's basically digitalized your speaker training and your social media, because everything that you've done in speaker training, presenting, theater before is basically what being a Clubhouse host, a podcast host, a person on video is effectively all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best part is that before I had to be out usually on red carpets interviewing celebrities. Now I can do it on Clubhouse and I don't have to wear high heels. That's my favorite part. No one knows I'm at home in my sweatpants. Like, it's perfect. It's perfect. So tell anyone. But yeah.
That's the thing that I do love about people and following them on Instagram, is that element of where you just get the selfie picture and it's like, I'm on Clubhouse and they've got a bear dressing gown on with the hood up, or they're in like stripy PJs or whatever. And it's just like their hair's all over the place. And it's like, you would never know because there's no visual aspect to this app.
I know. So ladies out there, you don't ever have to do your makeup. I mean, my gosh, you just have to put your makeup on when Gary asks you to be on his podcast. Other than that, you're good.
You're all good. So what would be the main outcome that people get from going through your kind of Clubhouse moderator program?
They feel confident coming out on the other side. So again, it goes back to that confidence. And the other aim is for them to feel comfortable, for them to be able to go on Clubhouse, start a room, and feel at ease doing it. And I think the greatest part about Clubhouse is anyone can use it. So you can be in any field or industry and go on there and share what it is that you do. So literally teach people. And from that, get business, get clients, get prospective clients. So to be able to do that comfortably and confidently, oh my gosh, it's a winning combination. It's like gold. We have this amazing app now, and I want people to be able to use it and amplify their voices and be able to just take it to the greatest lengths, use it to their full potential. And yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Gary, my DMs have exploded since going on Clubhouse. My followings are up on other platforms. Clients are coming from it, and I'm not even asking for them. So it's really a matter of showing up, and feeling comfortable and confident enough to speak up in a room, to lead a room, and to stand out from others, because there are so many on the app.
Yeah, without a doubt. And those skills, without a shadow of a doubt, will be transferable into public speaking, video production, pre-recorded, live, IG Reels, whatever it is that you want to do. That is
Zoom calls.
The same principles.
Completely. And think of all the people that are on Zoom these days for the work, and they translate into Zoom calls. And the other thing that I love is working with people this way. It helps them be comfortable live. So even people that right now, maybe they're comfortable with like you said, pre-recorded, which a lot of celebrities are. They're comfortable with things that are done ahead of time, but they're not necessarily comfortable when things go live. And that's why you find a lot of them on the app are struggling right now, because they're placed in these situations where all of a sudden they're live. Like even Elon Musk, people were saying, how come he sounded like this? And, his energy, and because he's not used to being live, that's all.
Yeah.
So it just takes some practice. And,
Yeah, without a doubt. Awesome. So where, as a final point then, where can people and the listeners go and grab a copy of your Clubhouse Moderator program? And where would you like them to connect with you on socials? Because no doubt they are going to be reaching out to you to say how inspired they are after listening to you today.
Oh, thank you. So the course can be found at moderatingmadeeasy.com, but it can also be found, all the information is up at babbleonbrooke.com. So to keep it easy for you, at Babble on Brooke on all social medias, babbleonbrooke.com. You can sign up for my email list to get notifications of other things that are coming out. So yeah, every social media place you can think of, I'm the same name, at Babble on Brooke, 3 words. Sometimes people hear that and they think it's Babylon, like the town. And I'm like, no, I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, Babble on Brooke with an E.
Correct. Yes.
We'll put links in the show notes for you to Babble on Brooke's website and to the social media and Instagram, and you'll be able to go and connect with her on there. And I don't know how about you guys after listening to that, but I'm super inspired. I'm super motivated. I'm feeling more proactive than I was before to go out and achieve more mentally and physically, because the mental challenges and the physical challenges that I've faced are just not even, 1/10 of what you've had to have been through. They're my microscopic degree of what you've been through over the last, 6 to 10 years, realistically. And just, I feel so inspired and so grateful for you sharing your honesty and your story with us today. And I'm sure it's inspired those people that are either facing challenge or, have got some adversity either now or in front of them, or looking back and not knowing what to do next.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And it just goes to show for anyone, I'm not unique. I don't feel anything is possible, and you can do anything. Anyone can do anything. So if there's anyone listening and you have doubts, trust me, you can overcome absolutely anything, and you can make anything in your life happen.
Yeah. And you can turn anything into a business. The skills that you had before, that you were at the peak of your game, you've managed to leverage in a world that has been transformed for you through social media, through digital, through transferring your acting skills into speaking, teaching, training, coaching, mentoring. And that just goes to show that the past experiences that you've got are transferable in other ways. When you have to think more proactively and be more proactive around it, anything is truly possible from a financial aspect as well as the mental and the physical.
Definitely.
So definitely. What do we call it? A virtual tip of the hat to you, my love.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
that. As we do over here in England.
I love it. Thank you.
So thank you very much indeed for coming to join us today and inspiring us with your story. Remember, if this is your first time listening, then there are lots of other episodes to hear to inspire you to be more proactive. So make sure you go back and have a listen, because you will be able to achieve more mentally, physically, and financially when you just flick that switch on your mindset to go for it. So thank you very much indeed, Babylon. And I look forward to seeing all of you guys on another episode.
Bye, everyone.